By the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
Yes, that was Joe Rogan revealing that he has actually turned down Donald Trump as a guest on his podcast multiple times. He was being interviewed by host Lex Fridman, who pushed back, saying that he thinks Rogan would actually be suited to have Trump on, will likely have Trump on in the future. Rogan's explanation for why he won't is telling though. And so I want you to pay close attention to what he's saying here, because he reveals that he understands the power of his platform and the responsibility that comes along with it.
Think I'll have him on?
I think you'll have him on.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
I mean, you've had a lot of people that I think you may otherwise be skeptical. Would I have a good conversation? Which I think is your metric. You don't care about politics, so can I have a good conversation? And I think you had like people like Kanye on, for example, and you had a great conversation with him.
Yeah, but Kanye's an artist. But Kanye doing well or not doing well doesn't change the course of our country.
Yeah, but do you really bear the responsibility of the course of our country based on a conversation?
I think you can revitalize and rehabilitate someone's image in a way that is pretty shocking.
So let's just stop there for a second, John, because Rogan has had all sorts of people on his podcast who have promoted or said all sorts of incredibly irresponsible and even dangerous things on his podcast.
Yep.
But it is interesting that for Rogan, Trump is his red line.
Yeah, look, I wish I could say I knew more about who he's had on in the past. Like, if you had told me he'd had Trump on in the past, I would not be surprised about it. I'm just as unsurprised that he hasn't. I really don't care who he has on his show. It strikes me as, does he often have politicians on his show? Any politicians, like national figures?
Yeah, he's had politicians.
He does?
Yeah, I mean, when she was a politician, Tulsi Gabbard was on. He had Bernie Sanders on. Okay. I'm sure there are other politicians, but I'm not remembering it.
Okay, yeah, look, I think, again, he approaches like 50% of like a well thought out point. He understands that bringing someone on his platform would help them by promoting them. And he understands that having a serious conversation with them and treating them as a serious person, bringing them on does help to rehabilitate their image. Of course, at the same time, he's helped to, by his own words, rehabilitate the image of people who are arguably as bad as Trump, who might not be politicians, like literally elected politicians, or those who are presumably gonna run for office in the future, but are definitely political actors. Alex Jones doesn't mainly do movie reviews. So look, again, maybe he's not thinking about this. Maybe there's gaps in his thinking. I find that pretty easy to imagine. Maybe he's being disingenuous. To be fair to him, he hasn't had Trump on, and I have no doubt that if he wanted to have Trump on, he could. So I'll give him that credit.
Right. So look, I didn't want to talk about this to either give him credit or not give him credit. I think that it's an interesting conversation because this is the first time that he has acknowledged that he has a lot of power with this massive platform that he's built. And I think that's relevant given what he got a lot of criticism for during the pandemic, which was the promotion of a drug that is not in any way proven to work either as a prophylactic or as a treatment for coronavirus, and that was ivermectin. And he continued to double down on that, didn't care,
and vaccine skepticism and a lot of other stuff too.
So for me, I mean, look, if I had to either decide to give him credit or take credit away, I think that even though he acknowledged something important, that acknowledgement makes me reflect back on some of the irresponsible stuff that he did on his show, and it's like, okay, why did you do that then, right? And then he'll argue, well, I'm just, I'm an MMA guy and I'm a podcaster and I do comedy. Like, you shouldn't be taking medical advice from me.
Then why do you constantly have on people who talk about medicine and public health crises?
So let's talk about that real quick, because he has all sorts of people on who, of course, push the vaccine skepticism. You've got Robert Malone, you've got Brett Weinstein. Peter McAuliffe. Malone worked on the mRNA technology and has complained about not getting his credit for those contributions. And since he's salty, he started pushing the vaccine skepticism because, of course, everything in this country is about me, narcissism. Who cares if people are gonna die? Disgusting. He's had Gavin McInnes on. And what's interesting is after he made that point during that interview about how his show can really rehabilitate someone's reputation, he then proceeded to rehabilitate the reputation of someone that you actually mentioned. John, let's take a look.
Look at the way people look at Alex Jones now, because Alex Jones has been on my podcast a few times.
Yeah, how do they, which direction?
The people that have watched those podcasts think he's hilarious. And they think that he definitely up with that whole Sandy Hook thing. But he's right more than he's wrong. And he's not an evil guy. He's had some serious bouts of alcoholism, some serious bouts of, substance abuse, and they've contributed to some very poor thinking. And if you know him on podcasts, you realize he is genuinely trying to unearth some things that are genuinely disturbing for most people.
The Posner family had to move 7 times because of Alex Jones's lies about Sandy Hook being a false flag operation. Their son was gunned down in that mass shooting.
Yeah.
Their son is dead. And to add insult to injury, Alex Jones lied about them, called them crisis actors, and then his lunatic audience proceeded to threaten the lives of the parents who lost their son.
Well, that's true, but he only,
but
to be fair, he only did that for many years.
Many years.
And in the words of Joe Rogan, but what do you mean? But what? Is it possible that a broadcaster can do? Let's pretend that that's the only bad thing that Alex Jones has done. Is it possible that maybe that one bad thing is too bad? That at that point you can't rehabilitate him? And it isn't. He thinks that every other shooting, up to and including the shootings of this week, were false flags. He still tells his audience that they're false flags. He still tells them that politicians are literally inhabited by Satan. Like this week, if you just took what he said in his show this week, it would be enough that you should write this person off. But no, he's just funny. He's not actively trying to destroy people's lives and inculcate xenophobia and racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism and all that. And I cannot imagine that Joe Rogan does not know this.
Joe Rogan's unwavering loyalty to Alex Jones blows my mind. It really does, especially since listen, there are plenty of people in this country who are struggling with addiction issues, alcoholism. They don't go around directing hatred and death threats toward people whose children were slaughtered in a mass shooting. Just saying. I could be, maybe I'm being a little unhinged here by mentioning that, directing violence toward people whose children were slaughtered is unacceptable under any circumstance, even if someone is struggling with alcoholism. So rehabilitating Alex Jones's reputation, not here for it. But the other thing I want to just quickly mention is, look, Joe Rogan will turn on his own beliefs, his well-established, talked about beliefs on his podcast to defend Alex Jones. He caught feelings when I called Alex Jones a fat F. He caught feelings over that.
Really?
He did, and I asked him about it. I was like, you don't think fat shaming is even a thing. You think fat shaming is totally fine. But for some reason, when I called Alex Jones that, which by the way he is, let's call a spade, he caught feelings. Because you can fat shame everyone else, but don't fat shame his buddy Alex Jones. Okay, anyway, listen, he understands the power he has with this platform, yet he is super irresponsible with it on a regular basis now. He's decided to surround himself with all sorts of right-wing lunatics and conspiracy theorists. But the other thing I want to just quickly mention is that he could actually use his platform. He can interview whoever he wants. I don't have a problem with that. Interview whoever you want. But if you're gonna interview someone who's a controversial figure, just know what you're talking about and just be informed enough to challenge what they're saying when they're BSing your audience.
Yeah.
So a good example of him handling a guest perfectly was Dave Rubin. He had Dave Rubin on. Dave Rubin made a fool out of himself because Rogan was informed enough to counter Dave Rubin's idiocy when it came to the US Postal Service, when it came to building code regulations. And it was great to see because he dismantled Dave Rubin's idiotic arguments in real time. Loved to see it, it was interesting. So he can interview whoever he wants. The problem that I have is that he seems to allow his loyalty for some of the worst people in this country to cloud his better judment. And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, it's annoying. Again, I would love to, first of all, let me be clear, to never hear about him again in my life. But more importantly, if he just wants to have a chat show where he smokes weed and he talks to people, and clearly he just wants to hear something interesting. That's what he wants. He wants to have on a brain scientist or an MMA guy or whatever, and he wants to hear something interesting. He's not interested in knowing enough about it to know if this is a reputable person, if this is a serious person, if it is responsible to expose my audience to this person. And I doubt he cares. I doubt even if he had the capacity to be prepared for all of his interviews, he wouldn't want to, because his goal is not to learn and better understand all these topics. It's to hear something cool and then largely forget about it and move on with his life. He's not coming out of all these conversations with a dramatically changed worldview. He'll talk to someone a month later who tells him the exact opposite thing, and that'll be cool and interesting. And all of that is fine. And if everybody who was a fan of him just accepted that that's what they were getting, I would be fine with it. The thing that bothers me is when people think that their fandom means something that it doesn't. If you're a fan of Joe Rogan, that's fine. If you're a fan of Jordan Peterson, that's fine. But what you're a fan of is not curiosity and intellectual rigor, and that's not what you want. That's branding. That's all that is. They have branded these people as being for guys who are more curious and interested in the world. No, guys that are curious and interested in the world can go to the goddamn library and they can read a book about basically anything if they want to. They can talk to these people. You are specifically going to a person who's gonna give you a really chopped down, easy to understand version of this. It's not really gonna challenge anything that you already believe. And all of that is fine, just be honest with yourself about it.
Yeah, well, they won't be. So looking forward to whatever comes in 2024 during that election process. It's gonna be great. Don't worry, Gavin Newsom, who has destroyed California, is considering running in 2024, which is really looking forward to that.
He probably won't make it on the show either, though, if I had to guess.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.